Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in, chances are you're dealing with, or maybe just thinking ahead about, that really tricky situation with the new baby. And maybe a mother-in-law who's just a bit too enthusiastic.
Yeah, that's super common. And look, most of the time, people mean well, right? But those good intentions, they don't always feel helpful when you're the new parent.
Exactly.
So our goal here in this deep dive is to kind of unpack why this happens, this over-involvement, and more importantly, give you some, practical tools, strategies.
Right, how to set boundaries, but hopefully keep the peace.
That's the idea, finding ways to establish healthy boundaries, protect your new family unit, but still, ideally, maintain those family connections. We want to give you some real aha moments.
And we've been looking at an article that really digs into this. It uses research, psychology, and even examples from like online forums where people share their stories.
Yeah, those real life examples are so helpful because they show you're really not alone in this. It's a shared experience for many.
So let's start with the why. You said it's usually not malicious.
Generally, no. It often comes from a place of genuine excitement. I mean, a new grandchild. But it can also be mixed with maybe some insecurity, like navigating their new role as grandmother instead of primary parent.
Ah, that makes sense. The role shift.
Yeah, and they often feel their own parenting experience is really valuable, which it might be in some ways, but they feel it should be, followed. There's that transition from being the main caregiver for their child to now being in a supporting role for their child and grandchild.
That transition sounds key. Decades maybe of being the go-to person, and now the dynamic changes.
It's a big shift, and sometimes layered on top of that, there can be a sense of, well, entitlement, especially if the family dynamic was already very close-knit, maybe even a bit enmeshed.
Enmeshed. Can you clarify what that means? Like boundaries are blurry.
Exactly. Blurred boundaries, maybe an excessive level of involvement or emotional dependence between family members, even into adulthood. So the baby's arrival might feel, to the mother-in-law, like a natural extension of that very high involvement.
Gotcha. So how does this over-involvement actually show up? What are the common things parents experience?
Well, it can take a lot of forms. You might see strong opinions, even demands about really personal things like the baby's name, or maybe pushing specific care routines, sometimes things that are frankly outdated.
Right, like advice that doesn't align with current safety standards or medical recommendations.
Precisely. Then there's the whole physical space thing. Unannounced visits are a classic. Showing up and expecting immediate access to the baby, regardless of what you or the baby needs.
Oh man, the drop-ins. I can just picture the stress, especially when you're exhausted and trying to figure things out.
Totally disruptive.
Mhm.
And sometimes they might ignore the feeding schedule you've set or care instructions you've given.
What about the way they talk? Does language play a role?
Definitely. That phrase, my baby, can be a big one. It feels like it undermines the actual parents.
Yeah, that would rub me the wrong way.
And then there's the criticism, often unsolicited, of your parenting choices. Pushing their way is the right way. Sometimes it even goes into trying to make medical decisions or giving health advice you didn't ask for.
And it's not always upfront conflict, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's more subtle, like guilt tripping.
Oh, absolutely. Making you feel bad if you try to set a limit, like, I just want to help, or don't you trust me?
Yeah. And the article mentioned an extreme example, didn't it? Something about the baby's name.
It did. That quote was quite chilling. You'll name the baby after me, or I'll make your life miserable. That shows how intense and, frankly, manipulative it can become in some cases.
Wow, that's a
Mhm.
lot. So clearly this creates friction. What's the actual impact on the new parents, on the family?
The impact can be huge, and often it hits the birthing parent the hardest. They're dealing with physical recovery, hormone changes, the massive adjustment to parenthood.
Sleep deprivation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Add managing an overbearing relative on top of that.
Mm.
It's incredibly stressful. It can definitely increase the risk of postpartum anxiety or depression.
And I imagine it puts a strain on the couple's relationship too.
For sure. If one partner feels stuck in the middle, trying to appease their parent while supporting your spouse, that creates serious tension. It takes away from that crucial bonding time as a new family.
Okay, so we understand the why and the what a bit better. Let's shift to the how. How do parents start setting some healthy boundaries here?
Right. The absolute number one starting point is self-awareness. Before you talk to anyone else, you and your partner need to get really clear with each other.
Talk it through together. Makes sense.
Yeah, what are your expectations? What level of involvement feels comfortable for both of you? What specific things make you uneasy?
So asking yourself some specific questions.
Exactly. The article suggested some good ones like, What's our ideal level of grandma involvement? What specific behaviors are off limits for us? What are our non-negotiable parenting rules? And also, maybe, where are we willing to be flexible? Not everything has to be a fight.
Okay, those are great prompts for that partner conversation. So once you have that internal clarity as a couple, how do you frame these boundaries? Are there different kinds?
Yeah, thinking about them in categories can help. There are physical boundaries,
Well,
visits, holding the baby, that kind of thing.
like please call before coming over.
Exactly. And maybe specifying when is good. Then there are time boundaries. How long visits last, needing advance notice, being specific about how much notice.
Notice seems to be a big sticking point for many.
It really is. Then information boundaries. What details about the birth or your parenting choices are you comfortable sharing? And with whom?
Right, you don't have to share everything.
Not at all. And finally, decision-making boundaries. Making it crystal clear that you two, as the parents, make the final calls about the baby's care.
Okay, physical, time, information, decision-making. That's a helpful framework. Is it better to set these before the baby arrives?
Ideally, yes. If you can have some of these conversations proactively, it's often calmer and less charged than trying to do it amidst newborn chaos and recovery.
Take some pressure off.
Right. But, and this is super important, if the baby's already here, it is absolutely never too late to start setting or adjusting boundaries. Don't feel like you missed the boat.
Good to know. Okay, so you've figured out your boundaries as a couple. Now the tricky part, communicating them. What works?
Well, the biggest thing the article stressed, and we see this echoed everywhere, is partner alignment. You have to be on the same page, present a united front.
Absolutely crucial. No wiggle room for them to go around one of you. I remember that quote from the online discussions. Something like, talk to husband. If his mom shows up uninvited, he needs to tell her to leave.
Exactly. That really hits it. The partner whose parent it is should ideally take the lead in the communication. It avoids making the other partner, often the daughter-in-law, seem like the bad guy.
Okay, united front, partner takes the lead. How about how you say it? Need tips on phrasing.
Yes. Positive framing is usually much better received. Focus on what is okay rather than just what's not.
Okay, give me an example.
So instead of stop coming over unannounced, which sounds accusatory, maybe try, we'd love to see you. We're generally free for visits on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Just give us a quick call beforehand to make sure it's a good time.
Ah, I see. It states the need to call beforehand, the specific times, but in a more welcoming way.
Exactly. It's less confrontational, but while being positive, you also have to be really clear and direct. Ambiguity is not your friend here.
No beating around the bush.
Right. The article put it well. Once you have decided on what your boundaries are, it's important to communicate them as clearly and straightforwardly as possible. It might feel awkward, but vagueness just leads to more boundary pushing down the line.
Okay, so communicate clearly, positively, united front. Is that it? Problem solved.
If only. Communicating is just step one. Step two, which is just as important, is enforcement. Consistent enforcement.
Ah, the follow-through. The hard part.
Often, yes. Because setting a boundary without enforcing it, well, like that quote said, a boundary without consequences is just a suggestion.
Right, so you need to decide ahead of time what happens if the boundary is crossed.
Yes. Think about consequences. Maybe if someone shows up unannounced after you ask them to call, the visit is very short. Or maybe you end the visit immediately. Or perhaps if advice keeps being pushed after you've said no thanks, you limit visits for a bit or share less information.
And you have to stick to it, even if it gets emotional. Tears, guilt trips.
That's the key. Consistency. Even when faced with emotional manipulation, and you likely will face something, you and your partner have to hold the line. Remember that other quote. The boundary is something you keep, not them. Your action or inaction is what matters.
That's powerful, something you keep.
And be prepared for resistance. People used to having their way might push back. They might claim they didn't understand or try to talk to your partner alone to get a different answer.
Or the classic, I just want to see my grandchild. Guilt trip.
Exactly, or minimizing your feelings. Oh, you're just being hormonal, you're overreacting. Or playing the victim, you're keeping me from my grandbaby.
Ugh, sounds exhausting just anticipating that.
It can be, but being prepared helps you not get blindsided. And this loops right back to the partner's role.
Right, the united front again. And the idea that each partner handles their own parents, primarily.
Yes, that his mom, his problem idea, while blunt, is often the most effective strategy. It shields the daughter-in-law. but the other partner still needs to actively support.
How? What does that support look like?
Taking the lead in those boundary conversations with their parent, backing up their spouse if a boundary is crossed in the moment, redirecting complaints if mom complains to son about daughter-in-law, son says, "We decided that together," reinforcing that you're a team, being physically present during visits if things tend to get difficult.
So actively running interference and showing solidarity.
Exactly. And watching out for triangulation that attempt to divide you. If grandma tries to complain to one partner about the other, that partner needs to shut it down and encourage direct group communication if needed. Let's all talk about this together.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk specifics. Unannounced visits, we touched on this, but any more concrete tips?
Be super explicit. We need at least 24 hours notice before visits. Or, visits work best for us between 2 and 4 p.m. on weekends. Set clear hours, maybe duration limits initially.
And that direct quote, no drop-ins. Must have a yes, please come over, answer 24 hours before.
Yeah, that's drawing a very clear line. Some people find video doorbells helpful too. You can see who it is and just not answer if it's an unscheduled visit and not a good time. You're not obligated to open the door.
Good point. What about the hospital and right after birth? It's super vulnerable time.
Huge one. Protect that time fiercely. It's okay to not tell people you're in labor until after the baby is born and you're settled, maybe even home.
Really? Just delay the announcement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That quote, "Don't tell them you've gone into labor until you get home and you're well rested," reflects a strategy many find necessary to preserve that initial bonding bubble without managing visitors. You control the information flow.
Wow, okay. That's a bold move. But I can see the appeal. What about dealing with the endless unwanted advice? How do you shut that down politely?
Have a few phrases ready. "Thanks, we'll think about that." Interesting," our pediatrician suggested. "We've actually got a system that's working for us right now." Acknowledge, don't commit.
Deflect and redirect.
Basically. Or sometimes you just need to be direct. "We appreciate your input, but we've made our decision on this." Or, "We're not looking for advice on feeding right now, but could you maybe help with folding this laundry?" Redirect to helpful tasks.
Nice pivot. Okay, what about when they physically handle the baby in ways you don't like not giving them back when they're crying or ignoring feeding cues?
This requires being direct and sometimes physically intervening. Clear rules are good here, like the ones mentioned in the sources. No feeding or changing baby without asking first. Please don't take the baby out of the room we're in.
And if they break the rule,
You step in immediately. "Okay, I'm going to take him now," and physically take your baby back. It might feel awkward, but your baby's needs and your parental authority come first. No hesitation.
okay, firm but fair. So, lots about boundaries, but we also want to maintain relationships if possible. How do you balance that?
It's about finding positive, defined roles for them. Maybe grandma is in charge of bath time once a week during her visit. Or maybe she has a specific task she enjoys, like reading a story.
So giving them a way to connect that feels good but is within the boundaries.
Exactly. Structure the visits, involve them in positive ways like family traditions, and crucially, acknowledge when they do respect your boundaries. Positive reinforcement helps. Thanks so much for calling before coming over today, Mom. It really helped us plan.
So it's not just about saying no, it's about creating a yes that works for everyone.
Beautifully put. And remember that quote from Peanut. Setting boundaries doesn't mean in-laws are any less important. It just means that there's a line where their involvement ends and your family's choices begin. Define the line with love, if you can.
But sometimes that line gets crossed repeatedly and love isn't enough.
Unfortunately, yes. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, boundaries are consistently ignored or trampled. In those cases, creating more distance might be the only way to protect your peace and your child's well-being.
Like that really strong example about the birth plan disregard. Fall in line, or she can never meet a love.
Yeah, that's an extreme, a last resort maybe, but it highlights that sometimes protecting your immediate family has to be the absolute priority, even if it means a strained or distant relationship with extended family.
It really comes down to protecting that core unit.
It does. So wrapping this all up, managing an over-involved mother-in-law. It's common, it's tough, but it is navigable. The keys really are that clear communication, consistent follow-through on boundaries, and maybe most importantly, that solid partnership with your spouse.
So, quick recap for everyone listening. Know your limits as a couple. Communicate them clearly, positively. Enforce consistently with consequences. Stand united with your partner. And look for positive ways to involve grandparents within those boundaries.
That's the roadmap. And remember, this isn't about punishment. It's about building a healthy family system where everyone understands their role. It takes work, it takes consistency, but often things do adjust, relationships can become more harmonious, and you feel more confident as parents.
That's a hopeful note to end on. So as you think about all this, maybe just consider, what's one specific boundary you feel you need to set, or maybe just reinforce, in your own family situation? And what's the very first small step you could take towards doing that? Food for thought. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.